A comparison of Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God and Toni Morrison's Beloved Through a Feminist Lens by Emily Polakov. Their Eyes Were Watching God follows the life of an African American woman named Janie Crawford. Throughout the book, Crawford does a lot of soul searching, trying to find out her true purpose in life. In her lifetime, she went through 3 different marriages, all of which end in some sort of disastrous way. The first marriage was set up by her grandmother, who wanted social status and security for Janie. Unfortunately, Janie did not love this man and ended up spending years of her life with him. In her second marriage, things ran a little more smoothly in the beginning at least. They were rich, living in central and southern Florida. Sadly, he died, leading Janie to her third and final marriage. Janie lastly married Tea Cake, who made Janie happier than she had ever been. Later on, she ends up shooting him in fear of her life because Tea Cake contracted rabies from a dog bite. The story then goes back to the beginning when Janie is in Florida. In the novel Beloved, Sede and her daughter Denver escape from a plantation where many slaves worked. Once they escaped, they moved into a new home near Cincinnati called 124 that is haunted by a revenant. The spirit unfortunately drove away Howard and Buglar, Sede's 2 sons. By age 13, Paul D., one of the former slaves from Sweet Home, claims he can force out the spirit so they may forget the past. Now, once the process is complete, they return home to find a young woman sitting in front of the house. Everyone seemed frightened at first, but she introduced herself as Beloved. Paul D. tried to warn Sethe about the situation. However, Sethe decided she was drawn to Beloved's presence. Later on in the novel, Sethe comes to realize that Beloved might be her 2-year-old daughter she murdered out of fear because she didn't want her to become a slave. On her tombstone, it only stated Beloved. Out of guilt, she attempts to care for Beloved in any way she can. Beloved eats Sethe away. As she grows bigger and stronger, Sethe grows weaker. Denver, concerned about the situation, called out toward the black community to help get rid of the evil spirit. In the end, the spirit disappears. Denver becomes very helpful in the lives of others, and Paul D. tells Sethe he loves her. Throughout the ages, African American literature has grown to be a very prominent and influential writing category, which doesn't only affect the African American community. This particular literature was originally born during the pre-Revolutionary War period and has since then become an original foundation for all types of things pertaining to the African American culture. Before the American Civil War, African American literature primarily focused on the issue of slavery, and popular stories came about, such as Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Slave narratives were vital writings which essentially exposed the cruel nature of humans in the ways that people dealt with others with different skin colors. However, African American literature is so much more than just those stories. African American literature has embraced a whole culture behind it and now often speaks out about the unique heritage of the African American community. As a result, this specific literature has incorporated oral poetry into itself, highlighting the significance of gospel music, blues, rap, and even presents itself in the African American tradition of Christian sermons. At a time when white males were the most dominant people in America, Zora Neale Hurston could speak from the perspective of more than one minority group. As a daughter of 2 former slaves, she could write from both the perspective of a black person and a woman. This is what made her such an important voice in the Harlem Renaissance, a movement that was also dominated by men. In her novel, she shows the struggles of a woman in this time. She was expected to fully submit to the men in her life. This story of self-discovery embodies feminist activism and depicts blacks as a valuable part of a diverse community rather than victimizing them. Toni Morrison is a contemporary voice of African American culture whose literature has been recognized worldwide for its activism and influence on literature as a whole. Her 1988 Pulitzer Prize-winning story, Beloved, is considered to be her best. It paints a terrifying picture of the brutal realities of family life for an African slave. The main character had to decide for herself that she would rather kill her daughter than see her grow up to be tortured and killed. Even in the midst of some of the most difficult times in human history, Morrison's writing remains courageous while admitting vulnerability. Her writing is essentially elaborate social, cultural, and political commentary that is not afraid to explicitly and controversially address the cruelties that the past members of her community endured. The feminist criticism found in both novels are rather similar in their goals of using a feminist lens. Both authors, Hurston and Morrison, were feminists who were adamant about equality for women, especially African American women, who are subject to far more scrutiny than white women were. Their eyes were watching God, and Beloved utilized the idea of voice. Hurston develops Janie's voice through her 3 marriages in order for her to find herself. The idea of voice is used as a representation of freedom and power for women in both novels. Janie struggles to find her identity in her surroundings and friends and family. In finding her identity, Janie also strays away from the standards set on women in that time period. She refuses to let societal standards define who she is or limit who she can become. Toni Morrison's Beloved focuses on the feminist consciousness, which is the idea of raising awareness for the feminist movement. The point of using this form of criticism is to show the importance of women refusing to accept the boundaries and stereotypes set upon them. This is especially important in the examples and explanations of African American society in regard to their history. Both of the novels align with the feminist lens and show the importance of the movement as a whole, as well as primarily in the African American society.